Hey everyone, welcome back to another weekly rundown. Today we're covering June 6th through June 12th. This week featured U.S. self-defense strikes on Iran amid ongoing negotiations toward a potential agreement, California election chaos, and continued aggressive fraud enforcement with major operations and referrals. Let's dive in. The situation with Iran remained highly dynamic, with a mix of military responses and diplomatic efforts. U.S. forces conducted multiple self-defense strikes following Iranian aggression, including disabling vessels attempting to breach the blockade in the Gulf of Oman, intercepting ballistic missiles and drones, and targeting radar sites, coastal surveillance, and command nodes. CENTCOM confirmed these actions protected U.S. personnel and maritime traffic after Iranian launches toward Kuwait, Bahrain, and other regional partners. No U.S. personnel were harmed in the exchanges, and claims of damage to U.S. assets were debunked. The situation did turn critical at one point when an Iranian missile shot down a U.S. Army Apache patrolling the Strait of Hormuz. Thankfully, the two pilots were rescued within 2 hours and are in stable condition. Iran and Israel exchanged strikes, and President Trump demanded they stop fighting and get back to the negotiating table. Trump coordinated closely with Gulf leaders and Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu, calling for restraint to preserve progress toward a memorandum of understanding. He stated the U.S. was in no hurry but would not accept a bad deal, with the naval blockade remaining fully enforced, and emphasized that Iran had agreed to no nuclear weapons and revealed the regime was beaten into submission. Key terms under discussion included destruction of enriched uranium, or nuclear dust, unrestricted Strait of Hormuz access without tolls, mine removal, and potential sanctions relief tied to compliance. Secretary of War Pete Hegseth affirmed the military was postured strongly and ready if needed, while Secretary of State Marco Rubio noted productive talks. Trump highlighted economic pressure through the blockade, with Iran losing hundreds of millions daily, and a potential signing in Geneva was discussed, with Vice President Vance possibly attending. Trump warned that without a good deal, further action would follow, but expressed optimism based on Iranian outreach. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent is reportedly making plans to use Iranian assets to rebuild Gulf allies they attacked, and Trump revealed the United States has taken over 100 million oil barrels through the Strait of Hormuz. Turning to the home front, the election month in California has devolved into what President Trump calls big cheating. In the Los Angeles mayoral race, Republican-endorsed Spencer Pratt held a significant lead on Election Day, only to see it precipitously drop as tens of thousands of late-arriving mail-in ballots searched for Nithya Raman. The details are quite staggering. Gubernatorial candidate Steve Hilton revealed that California allows voters to handwrite the date on their ballots to backdate them, which means harvested ballots can be counted even if they were filled out days after the election. Federal U.S. attorneys are now investigating structural vulnerabilities, and the House is considering refusing to see any representative whose lead was only found after Election Day. Pratt revealed he has a damning recording of either Karen Bass or Nithya Raman recorded by one of their employees, and he hinted that once released, the person on the recording would have to resign in disgrace. Simultaneously, the administration is defunding Los Angeles Homeless Agency after a federal audit found rampant fraud and waste. Investigations found individuals taking taxpayer money meant for the homeless to buy luxury homes in Greece and vacations at the Four Seasons. We're also seeing a global crackdown on fraud. A massive India H-1B visa fraud ring was busted, revealing that nearly 90% of applications contained fraudulent degrees. Domestically, USDA Secretary Brooke Rollins confirmed they found 200,000 dead people receiving food stamps in just the red states, as the blue states are currently suing to stop the audit. In Ohio, a significant Medicaid fraud operation led to charges, with concentrated schemes in areas tied to large Somali populations. A $90+ million bust and related prosecutions highlighted systemic abuse, and Small Business Administrator Kelly Loeffler exposed hundreds of billions in prior PPP fraud and suspended thousands of borrowers. Health and Human Services Secretary RFK Jr. and CMS Administrator Dr. Oz continued national efforts with a moratorium on new hospice and home health providers and audits revealing $100 billion in annual losses. Vice President Vance referred Minnesota cases potentially linked to overseas networks for counterterrorism review and investigated possible criminal negligence by state officials, including Governors Newsom and Walz. Additional probes targeted Ilhan Omar's communications and earmarks, whistleblowers surged forward, and decertifications hit underperforming state units. In a truly historic development, National Intelligence Director Tulsi Gabbard released a bombshell report this week exposing over 120 U.S. taxpayer-funded biolabs in 30 countries, including Ukraine. The report alleges that Dr. Anthony Fauci and others lied repeatedly to the American people about these labs, which were conducting dangerous gain-of-function research on hazardous pathogens. Gabbard stated that the intelligence community had previously warned these labs were vulnerable to attack or seizure, explaining, "Politicians and so-called health professionals like Dr. Fauci lied repeatedly to the American people about the existence of U.S.-funded and supported biolabs. Not only did they lie, they threatened those who threatened to expose the truth." In other news from the National Intelligence Department, President Trump announced Bill Pulte will take over as acting director of national intelligence early, on June 19th, with Gabbard's last day being June 30th. However, whiplash for everyone quickly followed when Trump nominated Jay Clayton, former chairman of the SEC and former head of Sullivan and Cromwell, to replace Gabbard. On the law and order front, the U.S. military executed a swift and lethal kinetic strike to kill Nino Guerrero, the leader of the Venezuelan Tren de Aragua terrorist organization. This operation was coordinated with the Venezuelan government, ending the reign of a group that has raped, maimed, and murdered American citizens. Furthermore, the war on fraud has reached the political finance sector. ActBlue officials recently pled the Fifth and refused to answer questions from Jim Jordan regarding allegations that they accepted up to $38 million contributions of foreign origin, including money from Russia. The administration is also securing the long-term future of American borders. President Trump officially signed the $70 billion funding bill for ICE and Border Patrol that lasts through the end of his term in 2029. This Secure America Act effectively shields border agents from any future Democrat attempts to hold funding hostage during government shutdowns. In other immigration-related news, an Obama-appointed judge struck down President Trump's $100,000 H-1B visa fee, and HUD Secretary Scott Turner is moving to ban illegal aliens' families from receiving taxpayer-funded housing that could otherwise go to U.S. citizens. The Department of Homeland Security expedited the deportation of any foreign citizen who illegally votes in U.S. elections, and Secretary of State Marco Rubio launched a crackdown on the birthright citizenship scam, shutting down a sophisticated birth tourism network in West Africa. The DOJ is moving to strike down Virginia Governor Abigail Spanberger's law that demasks ICE agents, and the DHS found a whopping 146,000 children trafficked and brought into the country under the Biden administration. Those who took the children called themselves sponsors and trafficked the children, who oftentimes were abused, assaulted, and exploited. While the border is being secured, the nation's capital is being restored. The Lincoln Memorial Reflecting Pool is now full and looks absolutely stunning. President Trump revealed that contractors removed 11 dumpsters worth of garbage and filth from the pool, some of which had been there for years, before sandblasting and coating it with an industrial-strength topping. President Trump announced the Arts of War sculptures near the Lincoln Memorial will be fully regilded by July 3rd, and Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy revealed President Trump is transforming Penn Station. Now it's time for the noteworthy tidbits, which are brought to you today by ZevoLife. Let me tell you about them quick. Looking for a game-changing way to improve your health? ZevoLife is the world's most nutrient-dense whole plant, packed with over 50% plant protein, essential amino acids, fiber, and antioxidants. Harnessing the best nature has to offer, ZevoLife nourishes your body while driving your performance, vitality, and overall well-being. Each serving is a concentrated source of clean, well-balanced nutrition designed to support modern lifestyles, and just 1 teaspoon a day supports your gut, boosts energy, and promotes healthier skin and hair. It's no wonder that it's receiving rave 5-star reviews. Step into a healthier future with a 30% discount and a 30-day risk-free guarantee by visiting zivo.life and using my promo code. To support my show and to receive 30% off your entire order, enter in my promo code JADE, that's JADE, at checkout. All right, let's get back to the tidbits. Foster children in America now have access to Fostering the Future accounts, a dedicated savings and investment vehicle launched by First Lady Melania Trump and Secretary Scott Bessent. This is the first of its kind for foster children. War Secretary Pete Hegseth traveled to France to honor World War II veterans at the Normandy Cemetery ceremony, and then he traveled to Guantanamo Bay in Cuba to visit the troops. Articles of impeachment were filed against Judge Eleanor Ross for high crimes and misdemeanors. Representative Clay Fuller explained Judge Ross was engaged in an extramarital affair with a high-ranking officer of the Atlanta Police Department, which is illegal under Georgia State Code, and that this extramarital affair was engaged in her chambers, a federal courthouse, and within hearing range of her own employees and clerks, a breach of ethical conduct and behavior. The Department of Justice busted an Islamic terrorist plot with individuals in Kansas and California found providing material to support ISIS. FBI Director Kash Patel revealed 3 million pedophile accounts on the Tor network were taken down and that there's been nearly a 100% surge in child predator arrests. EPA Administrator Lee Zeldin moved to permanently end cruel testing on dogs and other animals, and if you want to know more about this, check out my article on Substack. Switzerland companies have invested $27 billion in the United States over the past several months due to tariff agreements. President Trump nominated Todd Blanche for the U.S. Attorney General, and the U.S. Senate confirmed judicial nominee Anthony Mativi for the District of Kansas. Representative Jim Jordan confirmed the Biden DOJ dropped the case against the Southern Poverty Law Center despite them funding the KKK and neo-Nazis, and now there's a push to revoke their tax-exempt status. Senator Lindsey Graham won the South Carolina Republican primary, and Pamela Yvette advanced in the South Carolina governor primary, headed to a runoff against Alan Wilson. The Florida Supreme Court upheld the new 2026 congressional map. President Trump endorsed Senator Susan Collins for re-election in Maine against the man with the Nazi tattoo, Graham Plattner. The U.S. Senate confirmed judicial nominee Anthony Powell to the District of Kansas, and they advanced judicial nominee Justin Smith to serve as circuit judge in the 8th Circuit. President Trump added the Save America Act to his $350 billion Pentagon reconciliation package, which only needs a simple majority to pass. The UFC arena at the White House is now complete, with Fight Night being tonight, June 14th, for America 250, Flag Day, and President Trump's 80th birthday. The U.S. House rejected a short-term FISA extension. Cleveland Clinic agreed to stop all transgender operations for children and committed millions of dollars for detransition treatments. Elon Musk launched SpaceX on the NASDAQ, and SpaceX stock surged nearly 20% in one day. Representative Anna Paulina Luna is filing to void the fraudulent impeachment of President Trump during his first term, explaining that evidence released by National Intelligence Director Tulsi Gabbard proves Russia collusion never happened. Last for today, accused Charlie Kirk assassin Tyler Robinson's team requested to pause proceedings while the Utah Supreme Court considers their appeal over allowing cameras in court, and that request was denied. That wraps up our recap of June 6th through June 12th. This week showed resolve amid challenges, decisive action in Iran, fraud accountability, and fighting for fair elections. What stood out most to you this week? Drop your thoughts in the comments or on X at Shades of Jade Pod. If these updates are hitting the spot, leave a review and share the show with a friend. Also, hello to my audience in Brazil. Thank you for listening and have a great day.